I am really caught up in this whole black feminist thing. That's where I'm at. And for me, that is the topic of the hour.
I love it.
Yeah, that is the topic of the hour.
Shakka Ahmose. Welcome to the wine cellar.
The wine cellar.
Unfortunately, I'm not drinking wine tonight because your conversation is just so above that I don't want to go below drinking wine and I miss something.
I left my bottle of wine in the hotel.
Okay, I mean, we got plenty. I mean, we want to pop something open.
No,
we can.
I drink very special wine. It's Chinese wine.
Special?
Very Chinese wine with all these healthy herbs in it, but it gets you
Is it more like a plum wine?
No, I know plum wine because I eat Ethiopian food, but this is different. This is from China, and it has like all of these medicinal herbs in it, but it gets you twisted.
It's Chinese wine.
Yeah, my two favorite ones. Well, my two favorites are Baji or Tiger Bone, but that Baji.
Can I get those like on wine.com?
Probably not. No.
Where can I get a Chinese wine from? You can't come to the wine cellar.
Usually a Chinese outlet. And you know the funny thing is,
but they're telling us to stay away from everything China right now. It's so damn racist because of the coronavirus.
So. I want to say something because you've used the term racist a few times tonight. I want to say something to you about that term.
Yeah.
Sometimes when people say to me, Shakka, I think that you're racist or you may be racist.
Okay.
What I usually say is I would say, well, thank you for the compliment. And the reason why I say thank you for the compliment is I tell people this. Black people have to stop being reactionary.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. My thing is this. If racism is a tool.
Yes.
And it is a tool that has worked very well for white people. When you walk around New York and you see all of these skyscrapers and you see all of this vulgar wealth, much of that was gotten and maintained through racism.
Okay.
So if it works so well for everybody else, what is so wrong with you that you're too inept and too incompetent to pick up?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? If it works for the Chinese, and it does.
Yes.
And if it works for the whites, and it does. And it works for the Indians, and it does. It works for everybody. Why are you trying to be everybody's friend? What's your problem?
I heard from someone such as yourself, but not particularly you.
Oh, like someone such as me.
Well, I mean, I call them our historians, okay?
Okay, sure.
You're like a bridge between blacks and who we really are.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? That. I know some of the winos pick up like, Tasha, you kind of conscious. Yeah, I'm kind of conscious. I'm getting it. I'm reading my books and everything like that.
Yeah,
no. And the term racist is used or said in a very demeaning way, but when you really think of the word, it's like you're just for your race.
That's it.
You're just pro-black. You're just pro-white. And there's nothing wrong with that because
that's why I don't have
whites stick together. Chinese stick together. I don't have any beef with white people, and a lot of people have problems with me about that. I don't have any beef with white people. I just don't. Because there's a big misconception that conscious leaders such as yourself, and I know you don't like that word.
No, I know.
Historians, but you would be considered to us, because I'm you're a scholar. This is what you do.
I'm a culturally aware black person.
Okay. Yeah. Now, for those that don't know who you are, do you mind like just slightly introducing who Shakka Ahmose is? Because I know they're like, Tasha, what do we got going on here? A lot.
First of all, I'd be highly offended that there's someone who doesn't know who I am.
Ooh, I like that. You see what I'm talking about?
Highly offended with all of the work that I've put out over the years, all of the lives that I've changed over the years, with all of the people losing it when they meet me in the street. I'd be highly offended if someone out there doesn't know who I am. But for those who don't, for those who don't, for those who have been living, under the auspices of their own shadow. My name is Shakka Ahmose. I am perennially speaking the founder of the Nile Valley Movement. And let me just talk to you a moment about the Nile Valley Movement, because it explains a lot about me, about myself. The Nile Valley Movement was something that I put together that was, the purpose for it was to protect a black image of ancient Egypt. And that might sound oversimplistic. That may sound oversimplistic to many people. But when you understand what's at stake, you see, when you don't know what hangs in the balance, then you really are not in a position to determine what is important or what is not important about anything. But when you are someone who is sensitive to whatever may or may not be hanging in the balance, then you have more of a sensitivity to what's at stake. And when you are preoccupied with that, you are kind of, I don't want to say called to action, but there's this impulse to take action because of what is at stake. And in this case, what is at stake is black identity. Black identity. And in the age of, I always tell people, and this is some spiel of mine. I always tell people there are different ages, right? Mm-hmm. And she knows this very well. She knows my whole monologue.
He's referring to
my queen,
his queen.
Yes, T.C.
You guys are going to be married.
Pangea.
We're actually her interview is going to be right after you. So I'm doing two. I wouldn't say two, but I don't like calling out no birds.
Why not?
I'm knocking out.
Birds are beautiful.
Birds are beautiful. They fly.
That's
so
absolutely.
yeah. But I'm knocking out 2 interviews at once. So but same time. But so you're referring to
basically there are different ages. So everybody knows about the Industrial Revolution. After the Industrial Revolution came another age.
Okay.
And that age was the age of technology, right? Mm-hmm. After the age of technology came another age. It's a very well-known term, right? If you want to call it, it's a form of currency, linguistic currency, or language currency, cultural currency. And that term is the information age, the age of information. And most people are still under the inaccurate impression that we're still in the information age.
And that's where people like you, such as yourself, come in.
Right. And what I try to convey to people and impart to people, dear Queen Tasha, is she's so beautiful, guys. You have to see her. She really is. Absolutely.
They can't stand my ass.
Absolutely beautiful. And
thank you.
And so what it comes down to is that many people are still in error in thinking that we are in the age of information. The information age passed a long time ago. We transcended it a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Because there was so much access to information, people began to make choices that basically bled out institutions. So a lot of people left churches, a lot of people left the mosque, a lot of people left the synagogue, and what they began to do was pursue their own individual spirituality. So what we ended up encountering after the age of information, you really were confronted with the age of spirituality. And that's when people were talking about planets being in alignment and all this other stuff going on right around the turn of the millennium, right? Mm-hmm. So there was this awakening. Some people call it the new age this or this, that, and the other. Some people call it consciousness. Mm-hmm. But it became really the age of spirituality. Now, you have many people who got stuck in that age. Okay. Because after that age, we transcended that and another age came upon us after the age of spirituality. Why is this important? Because as time moves, these ages begin to, or the coming on of these ages begins to speed up. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go through them a little faster, right, than perhaps the previous one. Okay. And so, the Industrial Revolution, that lasted for a pretty long time. The age of technology lasted long, but probably not as long as the Industrial Revolution. After the age of technology, you get the age of information, right? The information age. Mm-hmm. That lasted long, but not as long as the age of technology. So after the age of information or the information age, then you have the age of spirituality. That's going to last that lasted a little less than the age of information. But now we are in the current age, which we're probably coming out of because these things are speeding up. The current age, and all you have to do is just look at everything that is taking place in the general world.
In the climate that we're in now.
In the climate that we're in now. And I'm speaking politics, of course. And that is the age of identity. We are in the age of identity politics. And if you fail to understand identity politics, then everything else that you think you understand is only going to serve to confuse you about everything else that you think you understand. Because it really is all about identity politics right now. If you don't believe me, just go to CNN, go to NBC, just look all over the world. You'll see. Listen,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
That's okay.
I'm not. I'm gonna have to do some homework on that. But I do see some of the shenanigans that are going on between, within politics now. So we're, that's a whole nother conversation. But speaking of identity and awakening and coming into an age of spirituality, like before you became Shakka Ahmose, of course you had a birth name. And, and that Shakka Ahmose came because you came into an awakening. Now, speaking of identity, how did you identify all of this, starting from the outside to the inside to now translating that information into people such as myself to help us, empower our lives. I mean, I see your hair, I see the tattoos, I see the real gold you got going on. It ain't no gold chains, okay? It ain't no rapper chains, you know what I'm saying? This is some gold you done got from Africa. I can tell because my husband's uncle owns like a jewelry shop, and this is the gold that is sent to me. You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
so
good eyes.
Tell us, because I don't think, people hear your lectures all over the world, but I don't think they really get to hear like what made you into who you are, or like what was that moment? You hear that, Winos? Yep, that's the squeaky clean sound that your yoni makes after using Embrace Pangea's feminine wash. Not only will your yoni be clean, but the rose and honeysuckle extracts will leave it smelling fresh. We all know that a fresh yoni brings on a whole new level of confidence, so visit EmbracePangea.com for your confidence boost. And while you're at it, please check out some of their other natural products, including skincare, oral care, hair care, and much, much more. And of course, I got my Winos covered for a discount, so use the coupon code TASHA for 10% off your first order. Queens of all shades, the struggle of finding your perfect foundation match is a thing of the past. Juvia's Place is a Black-owned brand that shook the beauty industry by providing velvet smooth foundations for all skin tones. And they don't just stop there. They also offer bold and unique eyeshadow palettes, blurring setting powders, and more. Products are conveniently located in over 1,000 Ulta Beauty stores or online at juviasplace.com. If you want to get your beauty on a budget, use the coupon code WINO for 10% off your online orders. Reverse! Reverse! Y'all remember that damn song? Don't y'all laugh at me, Winos, but for real, listen close and listen carefully. The olive leaf extract can reverse high blood pressure and diabetic high blood sugar, or the sugar as some of our grandmamas may call it. It can also kill any nasty little bugs in your bodies like parasites, bacteria, fungi, tumors, and much, much more. And if that's not enough, you can also tell certain cancers like breast, prostate, colon, liver, and skin cancer to take a seat, because the olive leaf extract has been known to fight it. And their friend lupus can get it too, okay? So I need my Winos to be in good health, because we have some good dragging to do. So visit myoliveleaf.biz to help get your health in order.
Okay, I think a little while ago when we were at your table in your wonderful home.
Yeah.
She has a beautiful home, people.
Thank you. I tell my baby done took over.
It really is. It's a beautiful
furniture,
beautiful
dirty now to the side.
Look, if that's dirty furniture, give me some, right? So,
thank you.
The short of it is, because I'm not a spring chicken, I'm not still wet behind the ears. I've got some years on
I think anybody listening could tell that.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah.
So it's a story that unfolded as a process. Mm-hmm. And rather than bore people with the detail of the process, I would just say this: that growing up from a very young age, I was surrounded and inundated with Black culture, mm-hmm. Black awareness,
okay,
and if you want to call it, Black progressiveness.
Okay.
And so a lot of that had to do with, I guess, all of it had to do with identity. And there was this overriding desire by the adults in the community that I grew up in, particularly within my household, that our identity, number one, be established and ingrained in us, and then two, preserved and maintained. Mm. Because at the end of the day, I guess the overriding thought is that if you don't have yourself, you really don't have anything else, no matter what else you think you may have. And so that was what they wanted to furnish us with growing up, a very strong sense of identity. And so the national anthem that we sing every day in school was literally Lift Every Voice and Sing, the Black national anthem, or the so-called Negro national anthem. We had to sing that every morning, right? Wow. Yeah, for graduation, when we would come down every year, we would march to, or we would step to Aretha Franklin's Young, Gifted, and Black. These are songs that many Black people today in 2020 have never even heard. They don't know that there's a song, or a so-called Negro national anthem. Rather than getting on,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, rather than getting...
I just knew Lean On Me when you're not strong.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
That's Bill Withers, by the way. No, that's Bill Withers. Yeah, Black people have their own national anthem, and it's called lift every voice and sing. I'm very surprised that
I know that song, but I didn't know it was the black
every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring.
I didn't know.
It was called the Negro National Anthem.
Lack of establishing identity in the household. Within my household, no one knew who they were, where they came from, to the point where I couldn't even bring my own husband to see my aunt. She was like, throw some salt at the dough. That man is from Africa. Ain't no telling what roots he's into.
Oh, wow.
So.
Wow.
That's why I asked.
Wow.
It's real, but it's real. So when you say, like, you were brought up in an environment where identity was established, and I look at reinforced.
Like, we weren't allowed to eat white bread, white rice, because there was this overriding thing that everything white was not good for you. In fact, when it would snow, seriously, no, I'm not even joking. You probably think I'm joking. I'm not even joking. We were not allowed to eat white bread, but when you think about it, white bread is not good for you.
Because it's really not. I don't eat it.
Right, so, because it's refined flour. It's, like when you eat food and your body gets rid of the stuff, that's refined. And so when you eat white food, all of the nutrients are taken out of it. So we were not allowed to eat white bread. We weren't allowed to eat white rice. It had to be brown rice. But the real kicker was...
Could you sleep with white women?
No, listen, let me answer the question. No, that was frowned upon.
Okay.
But when it occurred, it was, I would say, loosely tolerated. Only because, when you love your child, you love your child. And if your child is making a decision that you don't agree with, you may, for the time being, say, okay, I'm going to tolerate this because they're going to outgrow it. And they're usually right. They outgrow it.
Yeah.
You outgrow it. So, but with respect to the other thing, the whole thing of this adversity against whiteness, that's what I'm talking about. The adversity against whiteness. My mother, who was a career teacher, on the weekends, she would wake up at like 8 a.m., 7 a.m., and she would go outside and spend the whole day outside. And you would think, Mom, it's the weekend. Why don't you stay home and rest? And she would say, because you see all that snow outside? And we say, yeah. She said, it's about 5 feet of snow, right? We would say, yes. My mother would look us straight in the eye and she said, don't you ever let anything white stop you from doing what you're supposed to do. And then she would leave the house and go.
What?
You understand?
I need to meet your mama.
Well, she's living in Africa now. But that was her mentality, and that's the mentality we were raised with.
Wow.
We didn't always accept it.
Okay.
It's kind of like the preacher's daughter syndrome. When the preacher has a child, that child ends up becoming the wild one in town because they're rebelling. They want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so they become the poster child for the wildness, the opposite thing of the environment they came out of. That's how it was with me.
Yeah.
When I was a young adult, my late teens and my early 20s, I thought my mother was a racist, her and her entire community. Even though I had been raised in it.
Well, the term racist that we know as demeaning.
As a pejorative,
right.
not as a colloquial term or not even just as a isolated term in language, but as a pejorative. That was the way I saw my mother. That they were very limited and myopic in their thinking, and that even figure racist, prejudiced. That I felt that they were prejudiced.
Okay.
And
that's a better word.
Yeah, it wasn't until I got older and sought confrontation with myself. And I really felt this, I don't know if it's a universal thing or if it's a natural rite of passage, but there's certain things you go through in life where all of a sudden you find yourself being about yourself, getting to know yourself and confronting certain things about you.
I agree. I've gone through it. I have friends now and I can see them on Facebook, like their posts are changing now to more, they're more awakened and they're finding out things. Like I had a girlfriend tell me when she, I'm not, please hold your thought. I'm just saying, like, everybody goes through that. Like, I remember my girlfriend, I gave her a salad for the first time, born and raised in Panama City. And she was like, I ain't never had a salad with nuts. And I'm like, really? And she's like, I will never, ever be vegetarian and vegan. And now she's going to, the Black vegan festivals now. She's become a more conscious. She knows who this is. Listen to this podcast. I ain't going to say her name. She's evolving.
Yeah, and so, absolutely. And that's what began to happen to me. I began to evolve, but I didn't know what was going on. And when you evolve, if you're fortunate, the way the universe works, it will put you in front of whatever it is that you need to see. But you need to be the one that's sensitive to it and open enough to embrace what the universe is imparting to you and furnishing you with. And that's what happened to me. I went from being, as I explained upstairs, being a Christian and just trying to, this is a dirty word that I'm going to use because it's the dirtiest word in the language. I went from trying to be a Christian and assimilating. See, assimilation is a very deep word, and Black people unfortunately really don't understand the gravity of that word. And so I went from trying to assimilate and being Christian to being confronted with data, information, and knowledge that I had not been confronted with intimately prior to, on a personal level. I grew up, like I said, in a very African-centered environment. That didn't make it personal. That just made it incidental, happenstance, like something that's just there. If you grow up in a household full of whatever, books, wine, or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're into that stuff, but as you grow older, you'll have some knowledge about those things because they're there.
Growing up, the way that I grew up, not this Tasha.
Yes.
I'm talking about LaTasha Transferina Howard from Panama City, Florida. If I saw someone like you coming up, I would be scared shitless. I'll just be like, Mama, what in the fuck? Just like growing up, never saw like a black doctor. They were all either Indian or white.
Well, that's exposure.
Yeah,
that's
true.
all that is.
It's exposure. But at the same time, it's like, but there are a lot of people that are not exposed. But
that's
the
true.
City of New York is a bit different because it's always been based on
and that's
culture and the roots. And immigrants are coming in through New York. So everything is in New York.
Yes.
So like, when I see someone such as yourself who is so very just well enlightened and you're becoming you're becoming more enlightened every day. It's like, I gotta have you here.
Oh, wonderful.
I gotta have you here.
It's my honor, my privilege, and my blessing. And I mean that in the most authentic way possible. And I'm not blowing smoke.
I hope that you do because when I found out that you were about to marry one of my most precious sponsors. I mean, these black people got money.
They certainly do.
Yes. I'm looking at the gold. I mean, his wife is like, you listen, you carry yourself extremely well. You know what I'm saying?
She does.
I would say she carries herself, before I became who I am now, when I saw an African woman or, anyone that I was surrounded with saw an African woman, we assumed that African women were very bougie. They were stuck up. They thought they were all that. And, your wife carries herself like she knows, and she does know that, I am about to hold a PhD. You can address me as Dr. Atkinson. And when I see a brother such as yourself, because when I found out that, you were, because she did her interview, and like I said, we're going to introduce her in the next segment, because everybody's probably like, who are you talking to? Part 2 of this.
So we're not going to be talking anymore about her now because my time.
Part 2. No, but this is how you came in.
Yes.
I'm at a stage in my life where I've discovered my power. And, I'm knowing how to manifest things because I know who I am, where I came from. And, finding out that she was married to a Shakka Ahmose, and I like to say that because, that's legendary. I'm like, wow, I want to know more. I have 84% of my viewers are female. Okay. And to talk with a man, to be able to come to you and ask you, where can you point me? Because there was a question that I asked you. I said,
absolutely.
Do you remember that question?
I remember very well. Yeah, absolutely. It had to do with Jewish women having something set aside for them in their culture that allowed them to flourish economically. And it also, it made the men sort of subject themselves to that prowess.
Right.
And I choose my words carefully, to that prowess. Whatever it was that they had set aside for them within that cultural matrix, you were very interested in it because I think you wanted to take advantage of it and accrue it to yourself.
Right, because
it's a resource.
As a resource, because when I hear someone who is from Jerusalem say to me that a man can't go to God. What man have you seen that has gone to God and God has answered the prayers? It's always been the praying wife.
Right.
And so, we were talking about the Sabbath, and then when I was like, wait a minute, Shakka Ahmose, I can call him. And you pointed me to my roots, the Egyptian queens.
Without question about it.
And I purchased books.
And something, looking at you, even when you said that, it was like watching one actually say it about herself. Just now.
Yeah.
Because you have the phenotype of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And here's the thing.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't always see that when I look at every black woman. But there are some black women that I look at and it just screams from them. And when you encounter them, I think that the most beautiful thing that can happen is that they be furnished with that as a resource. Say, hey, look, I don't know if you've been told, but this very thing that everybody else is trying to do, you already did it, and you did it better than everybody else. And you might want to re-explore what you've done in this world long before you showed up this time. Because if you've already laid out the blueprint, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel this time around?
Yeah.
You already laid it.
I mean, because when you told me, Tasha, there was a white woman. I can't remember her name. I am reading her book right now.
Right.
I will definitely get her on this podcast. I will when I'm done reading the book. And she wrote about the Egyptian queens who were Black, who had the most thriving economy in the entire universe.
Yes, facts.
Right.
Facts.
And it's facts. And so
he's an African woman.
And when you told me that, I was just like, so what the Jewish guy was telling me was just an extension of what was already...
To a degree. And the reason why I want to say this is important. Okay. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that, and it's no reflection upon yourself at all, we're not taught to think critically about such things. So when someone comes to us and say it's a Jewish guy, right? Okay. And this Jewish man says, a man can't go to God, right? The very next question, which is what we should ask, we don't ask because the thought doesn't formulate in our head. The first question should be, well, what God are you talking about? Because you're Jewish, which means there's no such thing as this generic God that everybody prays to. I mean, I'm not saying that God does not exist, but that's not the approach that humanity takes. Right. The approach that humanity takes is if you're Jewish, you pray to Yah. That's what you pray to Yahweh, right? You don't pray to Allah, right? The Muslim doesn't pray to Yahweh. The Muslim doesn't pray to Jesus. So there are all these different gods, plural. You understand what I'm saying? Even within the Abrahamic religion. So that's important. And the problem that I have with us as a people is that we are not a first things first people. First thing first is to ask that question. So you're telling me a man can't go to God. I need to know what God you're talking about. So that way I don't make the mistake of taking what you're saying as mother's milk. And because that milk might be sour.
Oh, that's why I call Shakka Ahmose.
Yeah.
Because I was like, hold up, wait a minute. You telling me to light a candle on Friday? And I got 7. He said I had 7 angels given to me at any moment to ask for whatever. But when I thought about it, everything that I have prayed for over the last 10 years has manifested. And it continuously manifests itself. And I'm like,
that's simply just the authenticity and the realness of your of you. That's all that is. It's you. You don't need to give it a name. You don't need to give it a book. You don't need to give it any of that. And once you clear all of that out of the way, that's when you're really going to see your power. It's just you. That's it.
Who does Shakka Ahmose pray to?
Whoever's listening. Whoever's listening.
Do you believe in God?
I use common sense. I don't think it's a question of belief. I think that when you believe, you are playing a game with yourself. You're lying to yourself and then accepting whatever lie you tell yourself. It's actually in the word. The root word of belief is belie. And it means to give a false notion of. You can look it up.
So what you're saying is you go by a premise of no.
Exactly. So it's my value system. It's my axiology, right? So that's what really separates most people, value systems, axiologies, right? So somebody's axiology might be a faith-based axiology, right? Where they put faith over everything else, right? Somebody else's axiology might be an epistemological approach to life, where they put knowledge over everything else. So this often creates a very interesting dynamic in Black communities, because you have one contingency of Black community that puts faith before everything else. Then you may have another contingency of the Black community which puts knowledge before everything else. Now, both of these people cannot be producing the same results. It's impossible. So if you have one group that is constantly producing generations and generations and generations who are putting faith first over knowledge, and then you have another contingency within that same community who is producing a generation and generations of people who are putting knowledge first, you're going to get a very, very interesting dichotomy growing, just evolving or mutating in your community. And that, in many respects, is us. It really is. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay. You'll find that the majority of Black women in America are religious. The majority of those religious females, and you'll see that the data reflects this, the majority of those females who happen to be religious, who are Black, are also Christian, right? Therefore, by virtue of them being Christian, they are literally trained or indoctrinated to
assimilated. They've assimilated the position.
No. They've been trained, and indoctrinated. The assimilation comes later when you do it by choice, right? Mm-hmm. But in the beginning, you're educated or miseducated, whichever one you choose. But you're trained and indoctrinated to put faith first. Now, the problem with that, and this is a very problematic situation, and it kind of creates problems with us communicating with each other. The problem with putting faith first, and you're never going to be taught this. The problem with putting faith first is that faith has already answered the question before the question has even been asked. Therefore, what that is the height of human arrogance. It's the height of human conceit. That you claim to have an answer to a question that has even yet to be asked. And that's very important because answers to questions should always be commensurate to the question asked. Don't I always say that, Queen?
Thanks.
Always.
That is his wife, just in case you guys are wondering.
You understand what I'm saying? Okay. And so what they've done is they've disarmed us of our ability to think critically. And that's what we're talking about here. This is critical thinking.
Who is they?
The dominant society at large, Europeans, if you will, those people who we assimilate to be like, talk like, think like, and speak like.
Oh.
Yeah. Think about it. All of your audience, the majority of your audience, particularly if they are American African women or females, they only think, as we were talking about earlier, we think only in English. And that alone makes you an English person. It makes you a European. It makes you a Western person.
That's what I'm going to learn Bambara today. Because I was very shocked when you walked in the house and my husband said to me, he just spoke to me in my native language.
Yes, I thought that was I wanted to pay respect.
And you're not from Mali.
I'm not continental.
I mean, I wouldn't say that you're not from Mali. Right. You're not from Mali, but
I'm not a continental African. My parents are from America.
Okay.
From South Carolina.
And that is an unwritten language.
Right.
Like I have tried to find a book on it to study it, but you have to be in it and embraced by the people in Mali to teach you that language, that particular tribe per se. But
we don't use the word tribe. That's a bad word.
Why?
It's a bad word because it's a racist word, and I mean it as a pejorative. It's a bad word. It's what's called a psychoaffective term. Would you like to know what a psychoaffective term is?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the scenario. I'm going to give you the scenario the way I got it.
Okay.
Because that's the most honest way I think you'll be able to understand it. One of my favorite professors, he's a Nigerian, and his name is Dr. Femi Biko, and he taught at London College in London. And he gave us a little anecdote about sitting in the classroom. And he was talking about studying anthropology or something like that. And the teacher began to talk about the differences of civilizations, peoples, and persons. And she began to speak about tribes.
Okay.
And when she spoke about tribes, she was referencing persons in Africa. And so by the criteria that she was using for tribes, saying, just whatever it was that she was saying, to my professor who was in the class as a young person at the time, he said, well, hey, the people you're describing, that sounds like the people over here in Europe. So then the tribes here are the Welsh and the Germans, the Welsh and the German. So or the Welsh, the Anglos, and the Saxons. Those are the tribes here. And she said, well, no, those aren't tribes because tribes are usually smaller in number. So he said, well, then you mean like there are 30 million Yoruba, but only 12 million Welsh and German. So then, again, the tribes here are the Welsh and the German. And she said, no. It usually has something to do with being pre-literate. So each time he appropriately identified the term tribe with white people, all of a sudden he was wrong in the eyes of the teacher. And not only that, she would always move the bar every time he did so accurately, which means that this term is only supposed to be preserved and reserved for non-Europeans. And it denotes uncouth. So what it is that in the English language, there are terms that have a psychoaffective material that communicate something that you did not intend to communicate. That's why we have to be very vigilant about the words that we use when we communicate with each other.
I try to be, but sometimes the wine be getting to me and just, life. But that's why we have, thought leaders such as yourself to help, to keep us, striving up.
Absolutely.
Not forward, but up.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So, you educated me we spoke for 2 hours.
We did. And I loved it.
Upstairs and on the phone.
Yes, I really enjoyed it.
And I'm just like, I want to talk to him more, but I gotta go. And I think, women, you spoke earlier. You said something about, you said black, how do you say it? American, African, American.
I say American African. There's a reason for that, because it's a fraction. It's actually numbers. Everything is a numbers game when it comes to people, when it comes to the universe. And the people that manage us, they know it. We don't know it.
Jesus,
and so, right. So what they tell us is that we are minorities, right?
Yeah.
And so then we look at ourselves in what? Small numbers. So the fact that we look at ourselves in small numbers is going to communicate something to us on a group level about what we can and cannot accomplish, simply because of the numbers, right? So what happens is that when you call yourself an African American, and your friend is a German American, and your other friend is an Italian American, and then you have another friend who's an Irish American, what that communicates to you is that you're all American. The problem with that is that it doesn't tell the reality about something that really matters that we are still feeling the effects of. Your German American and your Irish American and your Italian American friend, all of them came over here one way, right? They came over here for the most part. I mean, there were some who were indentured servants, but our introduction into this part of the world, or particularly into this society, ours was topsy-turvy. It was upside down, right? And so what we have to do for ourselves is turn it right side up. We have to say, no, wait a minute. We are unique, okay? We are not like a German American and Irish American and Italian American. We're not just one group amongst many that just happens to be here. No, because when you do that, the first thing you do is you divest yourself of your story, number one. And without a story, you don't matter to anyone, okay? You divest yourself of your story. You disenfranchise yourself of your contribution made within the guise of that story. So then the first thing you have to do is you have to begin to define yourself differently. You have to accrue to yourself a different appellation. An appellation that says, this is who we are. And then that appellation has to say something else. So when we say, I'm not African American, I'm American African, what I did was I changed the common denominator, because with my European counterparts, the common denominator is that we're all American. So therefore, we're all one. So we're all one. The economy, that should be reflected in the economy.
Well, damn.
It should be reflected.
He brought it way. You brought it around.
Yeah, it should be reflected in everything, but it's not reflected in that. So why are we using a language that doesn't reflect what's really going on? We should use a language that reflects what's going on. So since our presence here is predicated on something different and unique, because we are so wonderful and different and unique, and everybody else knows it but us, our language should reflect that. So rather than African American, you turn it upside down. An American African. Why? Because now the common denominator is the African. So if the common denominator is the African, in order for you to find your new counterparts that have that same common denominator, now you have to look at what? Jamaican Africans, Haitian Africans, Malian Africans, Ghanaian Africans, South Africans. Now all of a sudden you become the majority. You have now affiliated yourself and included yourself with a much larger number. So your power dynamic is different now. How you see yourself, your self-reflection is different. Your common denominator, your that glue that connects you to a place, a person, even resources, right? If I'm an American African as opposed to an African American, as an American African, I see I'm breathing life or speaking to the power of my relationship with my fellow Africans. And that is the one thing that the dominant power of this country never wanted us to do. In fact, it's actually in their presidential memorandums. They actually documented that they needed to have in place as a policy that American Africans do not connect with Africans from the continent because it will change the power dynamics. That's in President Carter's, I think his Vision 2000 or something like that. It was Spiro, Agnew Spirits, or whatever this guy's name is. You know, all of these, Brzezinski, the Brzezinski papers. Yeah, it was in the Brzezinski papers.
He wrote that?
Yes. It's
President Carter.
It wasn't him, it was his foreign policy advisor, who was, the guy's name is Brzezinski, and there's something called the Brzezinski Papers. You can just Google it.
Okay.
And when you Google it, what it says, two things. The first thing that they were preoccupied with was they wanted to stop the rise of a black messiah. That's their language. That's their language, not mine. This is U.S. governmental language.
You mean Jesus?
No.
You said a black messiah.
They wanted to stop the rise of a black messiah being cultivated within the black community of America.
Oh, okay. I should have let you finish. Okay.
Right. That's what they wanted to stop. So in other words, they were looking at the next 20 to, I guess, I don't know how many years, but they were looking at the decades coming and they were determining policy about what they needed to prevent in order to maintain dominant European Western power here in America, in the West. And one of the things that they documented was the need to stop the rise of a black messiah. And they named people. I think they named people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, people like that, right? But the other thing that they mentioned in that same paper was the need to stop American Africans from connecting with Africans from the continent, because it would change the power dynamic in this country. It would change how black people saw themselves as it relates to power. Yeah. So that's important.
You said a mouthful.
I did. I'm sorry.
No. I love that. Don't apologize.
Okay.
Because the story of my life, I am married to an African man.
Awesome.
Who comes from, I know you said tribe is
ethnic group or community.
Yeah. Ethnic group or community. Mm-hmm. And their particular community dwells in economics.
Yes.
So they're the ones running the businesses. They're the ones that are working directly for the kings, the queens over there. Not to say they're not kings and queens, but you know, there's an hierarchy or whatever.
It's stratification hierarchy.
Right. And so the thing that I get the most from, I'm trying to say it right, American Black African women, or American, or as I would say Black, because you know, my people are from the plantation. We were mixed.
I don't even go to the mixed thing. Mixed even in Africa. So
right, true. But I'm just saying, you know,
we're so uncomfortable with being African. Let me share something with you.
Hold
on.
Okay. I was like, huh?
Hold on, listen for a second.
Okay.
We are so uncomfortable as Black people in America of being African and of being of African descent that the term actually makes us uncomfortable to the point where we are afraid to normalize it. We even feel like we have to put the American part on it. I don't. I just tell them I'm an African, period. And the reason why I say I'm an African is because there's an old African adage that says, if you take a piece of wood and you throw it in the ocean, it doesn't matter how long it stays there, it will never become a fish, right? So they're talking about the nature of a thing.
Right.
So the nature of a thing is, I'm an African. Period. Now, we can argue amongst ourselves, but while we're arguing amongst ourselves about who we are and who we are not, those other people are very clear on who we are. They're extremely clear. Those are Africans. Get them in the discussion.
See, that's where I'm getting to. It's like, it's the most ignorant shit that I've ever heard, because when I tell people, my husband's African, abso-fucking-lutely.
I like that.
You know, my husband's African, because they always ask, your daughter's name is this, your son, like, where are you getting these names? Like, and I'm like,
Hold on. Are you telling me people that produce Shaniquas and all these other crazy names are asking you about African legitimate names? You're lying to me. Do not tell somebody like me like that, because I will put people on blast for real.
No, but it happens. I remember when my daughter was, baking, they would ask me, what are you naming her? And I'll be like, Tantu. And they're like,
it's
what?
Such a beautiful name.
I kid you not. Even, look, my mom, I know she's going to call me after she hears this podcast. It is what it is. But she was like, what are you doing? Why are you naming her that? Well, first, in my husband's culture, the females that are born are named after the husband's mom.
Absolutely.
To keep the name of the family strong.
Yes.
But the thing that saddens me, it's like when I tell people my husband's from Africa, he is... they're joking. He talks like this, or he's controlling. I would never date an African. And I'm like, but you guys are Black. Like, it is, and I'll hear women say, I can't find a man. I want a man in America. I don't want to date a white man. And I'm like, okay, we'll date a man from Africa. Well, I'm not dating them either, because they're controlling and they think they're better than us. What? And so when you tell me...
think they dated 1,000 African men when they probably never dated one. But their authorities don't think they don't know anything about. And that's the problem.
And when
Black
you tell me...
people are professionals at being authorities on things we know nothing about. Yes.
And when you tell me that President Carter's foreign advisor wrote... in his policy to keep Black people here from knowing...
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, it is two completely different worlds. And so that's why, as someone like you, who serves as a bridge between the American Africans and the Africans to root us into who we really are. And I mean, I'm dumbfounded. I'm literally dumbfounded, because the very things that you are speaking of that was written into policy, I can see it being done. Like with this Black History Month, don't get me started with that. Like, it ticks me off. And here's the reason why.
Why?
I remember being in school one year, and it was February 1st. First of all, it's the shortest month of the damn year. Okay. So, Dr. Martin Luther King, he's celebrated in that month. I think a few others, and they move on. Okay, is the rest of the year white? What is this? So I'm just like, okay, you guys are still. It still puts us at a disadvantage when you look at it. The system.
But can I share something with you?
Okay,
if I may.
Yeah, no. This is your. It ain't about me. They're going to tell me to shut up anyway in the comments. Like, Tasha, shut up and let that man talk.
Well, here's the thing. And first of all, I just want to say shout out to the Tasha K audience. And you all have my love and my genuine respect. And it's very real.
Oh, okay? They respect you as well. Trust me. You'll see the love in the comments.
Check me out on Kimmy TV with Shakka Ahmose.
I will link where they can find you and all of your publications below.
So here's the deal. The real problem is not that Black History Month is in the shortest month of the year. The real problem is not that they celebrate Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. The real problem is that, and this is the truth of the matter, the real problem is that American Africans don't give a damn about Black History Month. That's the real problem. Oh. They don't use it as a real genuine resource to forward the advancement of the collective. Oh. They don't use it as a resource with which to generate real and genuine wealth. We really don't. We are
reverse! Reverse! Y'all remember that damn song? Don't y'all laugh at me, Winos, but for real, listen close and listen carefully. The olive leaf extract can reverse high blood pressure and diabetic high blood sugar, or the sugar as some of our grandmamas may call it. It can also kill any nasty little bugs in your bodies like parasites, bacteria, fungi, tumors, and much, much more. And if that's not enough, you can also tell certain cancers like breast, prostate, colon, liver, and skin cancer to take a seat because the olive leaf extract has been known to fight it. And their friend lupus can get it too, okay? So I need my winos to be in good health because we have some good dragging to do. So visit myoliveleaf.biz to help get your health in order. Queens of all shades, the struggle of finding your perfect foundation match is a thing of the past. Juvia's Place is a Black-owned brand that shook the beauty industry by providing velvet smooth foundations for all skin tones. And they don't just stop there. They also offer bold and unique eyeshadow palettes, blurring, setting powders, and more. Products are conveniently located in over 1,000 Ulta Beauty stores or online at juviasplace.com. If you want to get your beauty on a budget, use the coupon code WINO for 10% off your online orders. You hear that, Winos? Yep, that's the squeaky clean sound that your yoni makes after using Embrace Pangea's feminine wash. Not only will your yoni be clean, but the rose and honeysuckle extracts will leave it smelling fresh. We all know that a fresh yoni brings on a whole new level of confidence, so visit EmbracePangea.com for your confidence boost. And while you're at it, please check out some of their other natural products, including skincare, oral care, hair care, and much, much more. And of course, I got my winos covered for a discount. So use the coupon code TASHAK for 10% off your first order.
Everything else is important to us, and that was something I learned about Black people a long time ago. Everything else is important to us except our history. If I tell you Beyonce is going to be here, unless Marvel Comics tells you it's okay to be proud to be from Africa and gives you Black Panther, then everybody's from Wakanda and everybody's Wakanda forever. Right?
That pissed me off. Every time they saw my husband and he said he was from Africa, they would do this. And I'm like, the fuck are you doing?
And they don't even know what
Wakanda
they're doing or why
forever.
they're doing it. Yeah, and they're doing it to caricature because they don't know anything else to do. When I came into your home tonight, I didn't say Wakanda forever. I greeted him in his language, Bambara. And I greeted him in words that I thought would make him feel at home in his home. Right. And that was just me displaying respect for a king as should be.
And how did you know that he spoke Bambara? Because you have never met him before.
He told me he was from Mali. That was enough for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I didn't even think that.
Right,
okay.
Yeah, if I know you're from Mali, I will greet you in Bambara. Yeah. If I know you're from Senegal, I will probably greet you in Wolof or Serer. If I know you're from South Africa, I will greet you in your language because I want to make you feel home. Right. If I come someplace and you know that I'm from America and you say, oh, my brother, hey, thank you. You made me feel good because I can understand the term of endearment. But that's the real problem. The real problem is that we don't take ourselves seriously enough. That's the first part of the statement. The second part of the statement is important. As Africans, We don't take ourselves serious enough as Africans. So we speak about Africans from the continent as if they're Africans. So if they are Africans, then what are we? We're everything else but. We have a narrative and an anecdote for everything that we might be other than just, my favorite word. Remember Nike used to say, just do it? I say just African. I don't need anything else. I don't need to put any other appellation.
So no, this is crazy. So I can officially say that I am African.
And leave it there. Look, leave it there. Stop there. See? Stop,
I know, because I was about to say.
That's it. No, there is no.
You know what I'm talking about, right? But you see where we automatically go because of the programming.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. You know what it is.
Yeah, it's the programming. So
when I've always felt that, and you just let them know, look, when you're talking to this African, get it right. Blah 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 blah. Right. And that's it.
Okay.
Period. Here's the other thing too. You don't require Africans from the continent to validate your Africanness.
No,
that's not their place. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's you accepting who and what you are when you see that face in the mirror, that skin in the mirror, that texture of your hair, when you look at your child and what you produce. In the discussion. Mm-hmm. My Africanness is not up for negotiation with anybody. It's not even open for discussion unless I choose to discourse on it, on the wonders of being African. Period. We want to celebrate it, let's celebrate it. We can talk about it all month long, every month. I don't have a problem with it. We can certainly celebrate it. And I'm also realistic about it. I'm not one of these people that cheerlead Africa as if it's a fantasy story, because that's part of the problem with Black history and with our history in general. We romanticize a lot of it. A lot of it is worthy of being romanticized because of all of the dues that have been paid for millennia, countless millennia. Forget 400 or 500 years. I'm talking about countless millennia. Mm-hmm. We've paid dues on levels that most people can't understand. I'm not talking about anything negative or bad, like the Ma'afa or what you call slavery. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just paying dues by putting in work, developing calendars, developing math, developing science, developing warfare. I'll give you an example, and I'm gonna get eaten up for this one. I'm really get eaten up for this one, but I love it.
Say it.
Are you sure?
I love it.
I'm gonna bring some drama to your platform now. Okay. When you bring up slavery to African Americans, or to American Africans rather, right? When you bring, and I want the audience, I want you to just try this out for a week. When you think about yourself and you talk about your people in America, refer to yourselves as American Africans and just see how it feels. Try it on like you're trying on a new jacket.
Like I'm
because you might
African,
like the fit, right?
But I live in America.
Right. I'm born in America, right? I am an American, but I am an American African. You understand?
People, when I look at Asians,
right,
they can migrate over here, but they are raising those kids as Chinese. Better yet, I don't care what anybody says.
Let me take what you just said to the next level, or to its appropriate level, rather, if you will. Okay. I want to help assist in embellishing on it. If a Chinese person comes up and robs you and snatches your purse, and the police officer says, "Well, what was he? Right? What did he look like?" You're not going to say, "Oh, he looked like a Chinese American." You dumbass. You ain't going to say that. He's Chinese. Period. Right. Now, they might have been born in Brooklyn. Their great-grandparents may have been born in Brooklyn or San Francisco for 300 years ago, whatever.
Still gonna be,
but he's still Chinese.
Just like we are still considered Black. That was a Black man.
No,
Black guy.
No,
I know. I know.
No, watch this.
But piss us off. I want to hear.
No, watch this. No. Because you didn't get what I just said, though. Watch this. If he's still Chinese, we're still African, not Black.
He's not a yellow
African. Man. Nobody said that yellow man stopped me.
Yeah.
Nobody said that red man.
Yeah, you got me.
They said that Chinese man.
And I'm not even Black. I'm brown and
Watch this. So watch this. Watch this.
Okay.
Watch this. You know what I'm saying? No. Nobody said that yellow man stopped me. You said that Chinese man stopped me. You associated him and affiliated him with a land and a culture.
Right.
Like Dr. Right? Or even Asian man.
Oh my God. See, you just done went.
Or Asian. Even Asian, right?
Wow.
But when people call us Black and refer to us only as Black, as Dr. John Henry Clark said, Black tell you what you look like. It don't necessarily tell you where you're from. Let me tell you what African Americans really are.
I'm never checking Black again on any fucking application.
Let me tell you what African Americans really are.
Thanks to Shakka Ahmose.
Watch this. Let me tell you what African Americans really are. So-called African Americans. I say American Africans. And I want all you American Africans out there to listen to me. Because you're always so ready to claim Cherokee and Arapaho and Winnebago Sioux
that shit pissed me off.
Cree and all these other native American identities. But watch this.
I got Indian in my family.
Hold on, watch this. But but
okay.
you got Indian. Hold on. How you got Indian in your family when they ain't got no black in there?
Right.
So watch this. Right? But here's the thing. Watch this. Here's the thing. The thing is, I just had a brain fart, but that's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's okay. It's not
you said you were gonna piss us off, and you asked permission. I'm still gonna piss you off. But, could you say it?
But here's the thing, though, about the whole Asian thing and the whole Native American thing. That's what I wanted to say. American Africans. When I think about American Africans, because of what I know, I'm not talking about what I believe. I'm talking about what I know.
Okay.
When I think about American Africans, I'll give you an example. Queen, when you were gone today, the woman came into the hotel room to clean. And she was as we say in America, she was a black woman. And I said, hello. She said, hello. I was sitting there watching TV. And I said, go ahead, be about your business. She said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, go ahead, be about your business. And so I asked her, I said, where were you from? Because I could detect an accent and her demeanor, her behavior. She said, I'm from Nigeria. I said, oh, are you Igbo? And she said, yes, how do you know Igbo? I said, I know. I said, you're either Igbo or Yoruba for the most part. Mm-hmm. She said, I'm Igbo. And I said, okay, what's your name? She said, my name is Eunice. I said, no, what is your name? And she said, my name is Ifoma. And I said,
as right? They say, hey.
Exactly. I said, that's beautiful, right? And we began to talk. And she said, oh, you know so much about Africa. I said, well, I'm supposed to. I'm an African. I don't like when I meet Africans who are surprised that I know about Africa.
That happened to me.
Right? No, it happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
Of course. But here's the thing, though. I don't blame them for it. Right. I just don't like it because you automatically presume that I'm something else. If I'm an African, then it only makes sense that my interests should lie in Africa. I should want to know the languages. I should want to know the do's and the don'ts. I should want to know the whys in the hows. Why? Because all of that belongs to me just as much as it does to you. Just because you were born, it doesn't mean it stopped being mine at some point. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So one of the problems I have with black people in America, we often talk about reparations without talking about restoration. There's certain things that you need to be restored first. Okay? Stop talking about getting money and get restored. Get restored. You lost a value system. You lost your names. You lost your worldviews. You lost what you love. You lost what you respected. And what you've been given in lieu of all of that is what? What have you been given in lieu of all of that? Don't say nothing, because that's what you've been given. Nothing. Right? That's exactly what you've been given. Nothing.
I was going to say clothes, right? Jewelry, cars.
But here's the thing. We had all of that back there. Right. Cars. But we even had our own version of that. But the point I'm making is that the sister in the hotel said to me, she said, she said, we have a saying in Nigeria, especially the Igbo people. I said, what's that? She said, do you know Igbo landing? I said, of course I know Igbo landing. That's where they took prisoners from and brought them to America. Because a lot of people like to tell this narrative that black people were not brought straight to America, that we would stop in the Caribbean first. That's not always the case. Quite often we did come straight from Africa to America, and they don't tell people that. We did. There are many Africans here in America who descend directly from Africa, not Haiti first, Jamaica first, or Trinidad. No. Many of us came straight from Africa. Many of us. This is documented. Right? You can actually read about it in the New York Times from the 19th century. Most people don't realize how old the New York Times is. They have articles about it, about outlaw slave ships that had been outlawed but was still slave running, literally from the coast of Africa straight to Rhode Island in America and to South Carolina. So people need to dismiss these fake narratives about, oh, we're not African. That's the big thing on social media with young people now. It reminds me of black people in the 70s who didn't want to identify with being black. And so everybody in the family was Native American. But none of y'all speak Cree. None of y'all speak Sioux. None of y'all speak Ogalala. None of y'all speak any of that stuff. But, that's who I am. Right? So here's the thing. The thing is simply this. The woman in the room said, so you know about Igbo landing. Igbo landing was where they took the people from and brought them here. And so they have a saying in Nigeria. They say, my great-grandfather's son is there. My great-great-grandfather's daughter is there. And they point to America. That's what they say. That's not the first time I heard that. I know one of my former tenants was an Igbo woman. And she used to tell me that all the time. She used to tell me that saying all the time. My nephew is there. My so forth is there. So being that my time is limited here, I'm going to jump back onto Shakka Ahmose very briefly, if I may. Very briefly, if I may.
I mean, I could just bring you back for show after show after show, but yes, okay.
Actually, I did get a shout out. I'll talk about that some other time when the camera's off. I'll share that with you. At the end of the day, what I want Black people to know is just simply this, and thank you for allowing me to share this, because she was going to remind you there's a 4 minutes left, right? But what I want Black people to know is this. You have an identity that is waiting for you if you have not already embraced it. The sad part is not that you don't have it, but the sad part is you not knowing what you are foregoing if you pass it up. It's like watching somebody that you love walk by. Imagine if you had a friend who was poor and had no money, and your friend was blind. Imagine this. Imagine if you had a friend who was poor and your friend was blind, and you watched your poor blind friend walk right by an open vault with $1 million all just sitting in it. And the vault is open. Somebody left the vault open. And your blind friend is just walking right by it. That would break your heart. You would be like, girlfriend, turn around, go to the left. There's all this money sitting there. That's what it's like when I watch Black people forego, or American Africans forego restoring to themselves their African identity, because you don't know what you're missing. It's like I tell people all the time, I have to be careful with this statement, but
no, just say it for what it is here.
You don't miss what you never had. I'm going to say the thing that I was going to piss people off with before, because I never said it. And this is what it is. If you bring up slavery in America towards Black people, we are accustomed to react to the subject matter. We are very sensitive about it, right? But I often ask Black people in America a question. I say to them, what would you say if I told you that as angry as we are and upset concerning the grudge that we may have and entertain about slavery, what would you say if I told you that we enslaved them first? And what they did was just basically tit for tat. They got us back.
Now see, you done threw a curveball.
Exactly.
How the fuck we enslaved them first?
Exactly. You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. When someone performs a frontal lobotomy on you and destroys your relationship to time, and all that data is just gone, somebody like myself who is connected to it, I come along and I tell you, I say, hey, don't get mad about this, because you did them dirty first. Right? Yeah.
Woo!
You did them dirty first. And so a lot of people don't want to hear that. But I love shoving it in their faces, because I get to accomplish two things at once. One, I get to furnish you with some data. And then two, I get to impress upon you just how much there is that you don't know about yourself and about the collective that you belong to. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the reality of it is, yes, we did enslave them first, but there's a sadder reality. The sadder reality is that Black people, or African Americans, American Africans, have never really been introduced to literature. They've never really been introduced to the historical record in a very meaningful way, so that they don't know anything. If I mention to you the National Bibliothèque de France, right? Mm-hmm. I say, hey, you should go to the National Bibliothèque de France to study. Well, Shakka, what's that? It's the National Library of France. Well, Shakka, why should I go there?
My husband would know that.
I would say, well, Shakka, why should I go there? I said, well, you should go there to study, because there are a lot of things on record at the National Bibliothèque de France, the National Library of France, that you're not going to find here in America. And the closest thing that we have to it would be a combination of the Smithsonian Institute and the Library of Congress. But they would have to be combined to match what the Bibliothèque Nationale de France is, because we don't really have a national library here. Our national library here is the Library of Congress, right? Mm. But it's not what the Bibliothèque Nationale de France is. So the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which is the National Library of France, it's more like a combination of our Library of Congress and the Smithsonian Institute. So what you're going to find there is historical data of the likes which you will rarely, if ever, come across here in America. Knowledge has been very proscribed. because of the what I call the disease of power. There's a power disease that runs through this place because of our economic system, capitalism and other stuff. And so because of that, everybody's concerned with getting their little bit of power. And so, or maintaining what power they have.
Okay.
And so what you have to understand is that in America, there was a lot of things written about while we were still on plantations in this country. There were a lot of things that were written about in Europe. Because I remember time didn't stop for everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? People were still going to university while we were enslaved on plantations. People were still writing books. People were still creating printing companies, and all these things were going on while we were picking cotton.
See, my question is, because, we are out of time.
Sure.
For someone who cannot, you said 5 minutes? Okay. For someone who cannot access the, what did you say? The library in France?
Oh, the National Library of France.
Okay, National Library of France. Right. Where do they start as an American African to restore themselves? Because when they see somebody like you, it's like, how the fuck do I get there? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm hungry for it, of course.
It begins with?
Where?
It begins with the most important thing. I tell people all the time, caring is the most important thing. Because if you don't care about something, you don't want to know about it.
True.
When you care about something, you want to know about it. You want to learn about it. You want to get as much as you can get, and you don't know where to stop. And that's what happened with me. Because I cared in the beginning, I just made a choice to never stop caring.
You also had a great foundation, too.
I had a great foundation, but I needed to care. Had I not cared and wanted to get to the bottom of some things, I would have just pretty much turned out like anyone else, rather, right? Mm-hmm. Any other generic person, if there is such a thing. But what I tell people is you have to care. And once you begin to care, knowledge becomes the gift that keeps on giving because it's infinite and it's basically just there waiting to be picked up by yourself and anyone else. The historical record is not going anywhere. It's there.
One book right now that you can suggest to our winos that they could read.
To your winos?
To get started in the restoration process into whom they really are.
Okay.
If they don't know, because I know there's a lot of enlightened winos on the team. So
you got to bring me back to talk about Black feminism. That's what you have to bring me back for.
I know, like part two. That'll be part two.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I am okay. All right. Yes.
Reading. Okay.
Well, they can go to my reading list, which is on my website.
I'll link that below.
Great. The website ShakkaAhmose.com.
One book right now to get them started, to give them that fire to say, I want more.
Okay. Well, let me share with you one of my gripes with respect to American African women, females.
Okay.
My number one gripe with American African females is, from my perspective, they don't read enough. And when they do read, they don't read what I consider to be the right things as it pertains to restoring your identity. Now, if you don't think you have an identity that needs to be restored to you, as far as I'm concerned, you're twice lost before the game even starts. So we don't really have much to talk about. But if you understand that there is an identity that belongs to you and you want to be made whole, because I'm really big on people being made whole. If you want to be made whole and restore the identity to yourself, then one of the places that I strongly suggest that you begin is by reading a book called The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Now, when I say read it, I have very strict rules about reading, and I always impart them to people. I tell people all the time, if you didn't read a book from front to back, then you didn't read the book. Don't read a passage and tell me that you read the book. Because then when I start talking about things in passages and in the footnotes and in the bibliography and in the appendix that you didn't take the time to look at, you're going to think that my scope is much larger than yours. If it is, it's only because you chose not to actually read the text. Read the book. Read, as my professor used to say, read the goddamn book.
Right.
Read it. Right? Because you're not going to be the worse off for it. And the only thing you're going to have when you're done with it is a much more informed perspective. You're going to have much more insight and you'll have a much more informed perspective so that when you speak about a subject matter, you can do so in a responsible way, in a way that can actually enhance the lives of other people. Why? By helping them through the process of restoration. We are a broken people. And it's really obvious how broken we are for people to take the kind of picture they took in the White House recently with President Trump, all those black pastors, those black clergy people taking those pictures with President Trump. That was an embarrassment. In 2020, that we are still allowing ourselves to be pimped that way. It was a total embarrassment. So my thing is, we need to be restored. We need to be made whole. You don't hear people talk about us being made whole because there's an economic component to our dysfunction. Every dysfunction that we have in our community, somebody's making money off of it. And when money is God, you're going to always put money first. That's just the way it works. And we're going to suffer for it. And that's what we do. We suffer better than anybody else. We're good at it. We suffer better than we dance. And don't nobody dance better than us. We suffer better than we rap, which means that nobody suffers better than us because we in love with the suffering.
Wow.
We find a million excuses to suffer, but not a million excuses to read a goddamn book.
This is part 1 with Shakka Ahmose. I'm going to bring you back here.
I would love to come back.
I'm going to bring you back here because I want you to talk. I want you to talk to our female listeners like you would have a conversation with me.
Absolutely.
And your soon-to-be wife that you are going to...
She's already my wife.
Okay.
Yeah,
where's my wedding invite? She said I was coming to the wedding on the last show.
We didn't do that part yet. Don't worry about it.
That's just y'all just ain't shacking up. Y'all just ain't coating and shacking up. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't get caught up into this. That's my wife.
Okay, cool. Now, where can our viewers find you?
They can find me, number one, you can go to my website, which is www.shakkaahmose.com.
Okay.
Shakka Ahmose is SHAKKAAHMOSE.
Okay.
And I'm really easy to find. I tell people Google me all the time, Shakka Ahmose.
Okay.
And but I prefer, if you're gonna come looking for me, come to my YouTube channel, which is Shakka Ahmose. I have a platform that I've just recently inaugurated, and it's called Kemet TV with Shakka Ahmose. There are 2 official episodes, and then I just did a Martin Luther King birthday special, which I sent to you by the way.
Yes, I started watching it. It's long, so I watched it later. Yeah. It is. It's a lot.
It is, but that's the way I have a lot to give.
I know. So, I'm like, that's why I got to get you back here.
But when you watch that, the reason I did it is because they've never really introduced Martin Luther King to Black people, and I wanted to do that. I wanted people to
I'll link that video below so that our viewers can start to watch that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll link all of your sites below so that they can find you.